Welcome back to the second half of the Data Culture Eats AI Strategy for Breakfast podcast by CERT's IT Service Solutions. Our host, John Grainger, and guest, David Livingstone, continue their debate on how data and culture will shape the future of AI. Let's dive into part 2.
Yeah, well, I think that, there is a problem with the governance of AI at the moment. And I think there is a kind of a lack of really consistent analysis about where this is going to go. The big risk is bad people who want to use AI of whatever nature can work faster than communities led by governments. Governments are, and international treaties and, United Nations multilaterals, and they don't have the governance. One of their tech whiz kids, whether that's a criminal or whether it's a national, covert, organization, they can work at pace. And we haven't got the ability, as it is being managed now with the, heads of state coming in from all over the world to Bletchley Park and something. We've got to be able to delegate the governance of AI down to where real stuff can happen and really quickly. And this is nothing but what was called the Boyd cycle or the OODA loop. It's like a decision action cycle. So the OODA loop is how you shoot down enemy airplanes. And it was observe, orientate, decide, and act. And it's a circular process. So you observe, orientate, decide, act, and you go back, well, how did that work? You observe, and it goes around in a loop. It's called the OODA loop. Yeah. What we've got to be able to do, and of course, bad people have very short OODA loops because, they don't have any huge, as you say, chunky governance in the middle. Yeah. Is how do we, in terms of managing the threats in AI, how do we compress our OODA loop, our decision action cycle, to a state where it is as close as it can be to the enemy's OODA loop?
Yeah, and which means we have to be able to act much, much faster. And on your OODA loop, it's interesting. So with my computer science hat on, I would call that a learning system. Yeah, so you've got classic feedback going on. The bit that's missing, and maybe it isn't missing it after you've iterated once, is the feed forward. So the feed forward's telling you, it's giving you information to anticipate, and then you're acting, and then you've got feedback on how you've acted. So that's the kind of like the learning system. And what's really interesting is you've got AI mechanisms. So the attempt to make cars drive themselves, that's a kind of an independent that learns on its own. So it's set up to kind of get feedback on its own and to sort of self-correct. And if you've ever seen the YouTube video, David, where they do a racing track, it's like it's 2D. So it's just a racing track. And they set off all these tiny little cars. They're not real cars. It's all done it's a computer simulation. And all the cars just crash immediately. And then one of them gets a little bit further. Then once all the cars have crashed, they start the race again. And the algorithm is just learning from that. And eventually it takes 9 minutes and they speed it up. But eventually one of the cars makes it all the way around consistently, just keeps going. So it's a bit like, that is kind of like an evolutionary model, because it's basically saying, once the cars get to this point and they can't go any further, you kill that one, but you take the one that got furthest and then you start again, get everyone to take that track, and then so it's sort of fascinating that you have systems that teach is definitely the wrong word, but they're kind of getting their inputs independently. You're putting it out there and it's getting its own kind of feedback. Yes.
But I've been in the Navy where the computers were the size of this table.
Yes.
To do. I remember the first computer in my first computerized ship was called the FM 1600B, made by B. Yep. And there were 2 of them in the Type 21 frigate, made by Ferranti.
Okay.
And it was like, I guess 15 years, well, even 10 years later.
Yeah.
And these things lived in the computer room. They had those flickering lights, these huge, great big boxes about, 10 foot long.
Yes.
10 years later, we were playing computer games, in wardroom messes, busting tanks as they came over the horizon. Yeah.
If I throw something in, so you mentioned computers, something I'm quite passionate about, or I am that's kind of a bit of my background. But so one of the really interesting things, if you draw a line between what we're doing with AI now, or computers generally, and what we used to do, it's very much related to our ability to scale very rapidly on how much compute, as we call it, that you would need. So if you think about that Ferranti Model B that you had in your ship, what can happen now for cloud is if you wanted to ask the computer a very complicated question, which might be, what the AI algorithm is running off of, it now has the equivalent of being able to instantly link up with 5,000 other ships and to use all 5,000 Model Bs together for 5 minutes to answer your question. And then when it's answered the question, to then release all the other all the other computers and go back to just being one computer. So this is what we have in cloud computing. It's how we call it N plus 1 technology, because in computer science we don't like using numbers. We just use N. N just means iterate forever. And so this ability to take your workload, as we call it, and then suddenly rapidly scale it up, that combined with the circuit board, it's not a circuit board, but the GPUs, graphical process units at NVIDIA typically, put those 2 things together, and that's where that's what's kind of unleashing the computational power that you need to do this kind of work. When we get into fusion, got to make sure I get the right one because we don't want the other one. And when we get into fusion and also quantum, then we really are getting into, well, obviously completely uncharted territory. But what you've suddenly got there is you've got unlimited power going into an absolutely exponential increase in computational power that isn't going to be harming the planet, because you're not going to have it's kind of completely self-providing. I know all of this is going to sound to a lot of people, oh wow, this is kind of way off there. But tech is kind of beating all of our predictions and arriving earlier these days rather than later. So you put all that together, David, and then you've got a pretty much unimaginable computational power. Instead of connecting to those 200 ships, I think I said, it's like connecting to 5 million ships once you bring in quantum. And then you've just got this brute force computational power that can turn any rubbish algorithm into very much feeling like you're speaking to a human. Is kind of, there you go, it's my doomsday.
Hey, okay.
Doomsday. Sorry, David.
Okay.
Got a bit carried away there.
No, it's okay, John. No, because I think it's just pinged something here. Have you heard of Kipling's 6 Honest Serving Men? It's a poem. I have 6 honest serving men. I send them near and far. Blah, blah, blah. And they are what, why, when, where, who, and how. You can dismantle any political problem, business problem, technical problem. The question I would go for, why are we doing this? I can see some fantastic stuff in terms of medical, for example, human rights, interpretation of satellite data, watching for, infringement of human rights, child slave labor, pollution, all that kind of stuff.
All the sort of those huge crunching stuff.
To stop disasters, to all, give mankind a chance, to live out the, 70 or whatever it's going to be in the future. Why else do we want AI? this concept.
No, I like it. I like this, but I'm going to throw something else in.
What is the motivation? We've got to destroy more planet to dig out the critical minerals for those 5,000 computers that you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
We've got all sorts of, those democratic processes which we have developed over hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Are now at risk because of over-adoption of ICT, which is a mere, what is that clock of doom? It's a microsecond on that clock of doom.
We're not far off midnight.
Yeah, not far off midnight. And here we are saying, these are all the wonderful benefits. Question the benefits. Once you strip out people's profit motive, like, Musk, Zuckerberg, whoever, strip out that. Look, we don't need to do this. We can have AI in some very limited scope. Yeah. Don't ask me the practicalities of where you host it and how you vet people, bring it on and so on.
Yeah.
But the proliferation of AI, particularly as we are on the uptick of that first thing in the damned fugoid.
Yeah.
We're in election year, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Why do we need this? Why do we need robots?
Yeah, no, I like.
Does that mean people?
I love it.
Does that mean people won't have pensions because they've never worked?
Yeah.
Where does the wealth come from?
I know we have to get totally. So I'm going to throw something in then, which you made me think of, which is the Winchester rifle and the widow of the Winchester rifle. Fortune ended up building this just really odd house with lots of different rooms in it, and the rooms don't go anywhere. And she until she died, she had people in, and eventually she had like 150 rooms built. It's this kind of infamous place in the States somewhere. You can see it online. And people are like, well, what on earth is she doing? And what she was trying to do is she was saying, the Winchester rifle has killed so many people that the spirits of the people who've died from that rifle are going to come back and they're going to haunt me. And I've been told that if you have room, she just, clearly was very troubled and extremely wealthy. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because I think the AI why question is like, why did we have the Winchester rifle? It's already out there, David. And what we've got to do is say, how do we deal with it? Because I'm with you on the why, but I feel like it's already there. There was I can't remember the author's name, but it's a chap from Microsoft who wrote this quite a few years ago. But the essence was sort of tools and weapons. So if we take the toothbrush example, that toothbrush, if you took the end off, you could probably do some damage with someone. So every tool can be a weapon, broadly speaking. You could, look at prisons and what they do when they file down a tooth, a spoon.
Just like a James Bond or Special Forces or something like that.
So literally every tool, and the Neanderthal who's using, I don't want to get sort of Arthur C. Clarke or anything, but, he's using a bone to smash up something and then suddenly he hits, one of his competitors with it. So we've always been in this kind of tool weapon space. It's kind of part of our, who knows if it's part of our condition or whatever, but I'm just thinking with AI, David, we need to prepare for this. I'm going to sound just too apocalyptic, but I don't think we can stop it. And I think the governance thing that you're talking about as well, we've got to be able to rapidly understand this. In the same way that you guys do a lot of heuristics, don't you? In the military, you kind of you do a plan, but then when you're in it, you just have to respond, but you're responding based on a massive set of heuristics, so you're not just being random, but you are making really, really fast decisions, aren't you?
Yes, and that can be what's called a combat estimate, which can take you hours and hours if that's like a divisional combat. When you look at the processes, that's flowed down through brigade and then regiment and then company, then platoon, and down to your little unit of 3 people. Everyone's doing these combat estimates, and sometimes things change. No shell survive the first blow, no plan survive the first blow of war, or something like that.
Right,
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Once again, we come back to the OODA loop. How fast can we make these decisions on assessing what the enemy is, which is misuse of AI?
Yeah.
assessing some way of saying, where could it all end up, and then coming up with, well, if it does go that way, this is what we're going to have to do. But on the other hand, if everyone suddenly in a moment of enlightenment says, well, actually, we're going to go down another path, fantastic, because everyone then realizes the risks. And this is another systemic problem, because we'll have kids coming through school and going early into, college and, universities and stuff like that, who are going to be banding around this AI stuff. It's a brand, it's a fad, it's whatever you like. Oh yeah, my dad's got AI in his car now. What does that do? Switch the ignition on, or makes the map go to the right scale.
David, I don't think they'll be boasting about saying my dad's got an AI toothbrush. That's for sure. They might keep that one quiet, but I agree with you on the car front. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've looked at, The 6 Honest Serving Men by Kipling.
Yeah.
I think we've done the sort of what, and we've dismantled the what, is AI.
Yes.
I think we've just done, why do we want AI?
Yes. And do we have any choice? Yeah.
And as you say, when is the cat out the bag? Are there so many kangaroos loose in the top paddock now, we won't be able to constrain them? If you see what I mean.
Yes.
And I think there is, where do we control, okay, where do things happen? And you've just gone into 50,000 computers suddenly working together to come up with an answer within 30 seconds.
Yes.
Because that's probably on a KPI somewhere. But I think where do we have that educated debate where we can educate, inform, and all of that kind of stuff? So those that have ambition to misuse AI or to allow AI to be misused, let's say, are able to say, right, I understand this now. I understand it better. And actually, this could hazard the well-being of my country, my people, and all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's, AI is geographically independent. As you say, you can summon 50,000 computers up all at once. It's a global commons, the AI monster. But who is actually walking their dogs on the commons? If you see what I mean, who are the key players, and how do you impose moralistic controls by raising the likelihood of misuse of the technologies that are being made available? And so on.
I think there's another thing in here as well, which is, I don't know if this is the prisoner's dilemma when you split two people apart and you kind of say, guy over the road's about to spill, or he's already spilt the beans on you, but if you want to do a deal with us, that kind of prisoner's dilemma piece. AI is out there, yeah, and there's this expression that turned up pretty early on with generative AI. People don't say it as often, but definitely in the early stages, people were saying that AI isn't going to replace people's jobs. And this part 2 of it was, people who use AI are going to replace the jobs of people who don't use AI. I remember hearing that. It was words to that effect, David. So it's still very, survival of the fittest kind of statement to make.
Until John,
go on, yes.
There are instances when somebody very famous who says, I always use AI, takes a nosedive for whatever reason, makes a wrong call on investment,
and that's the piece
blah, blah, blah.
that comes off the peak
And fuel quote.
Yeah.
Exactly so.
So we are pre Fluglet. We're not post Fluglet as far as AI is concerned. That's the David Livingstone prediction.
Yeah, I think this could be. It's going so far. So you think about Moore's law of every 7 years. I think it's going much faster than that. But it could be the big crunch, like a completely messed up democratic, and I'm going to say democratic rather than authoritarian elections this year, that techniques were used in order to discredit the presidential candidates, discredit the leaders of the political parties here. Have we taken anticipatory action?
Yes.
Which is going to say, look, here are the checks and balances. I think it could almost become where the argument post an election mess where the arguments about what went wrong could even be AI generated.
Yes.
So this thing becomes a self-reinforcing, as it were, evil.
So a couple of points on the Moore's Law piece. The strict definition of Moore's Law is the number of transistors that you can fit on a board kind of doubles every however many years. And then obviously
I think it was 7
getting
years
faster and faster. We've kind of reached a point, I think, where even with the best technology, we're kind of getting into marginal gains, but we do use Moore's Law as a proxy for just the pace at which technology seems to be running away. So totally with you on that one. What I want to ask you, David, is what's the difference between why are you and I talking about AI and that as a galloping technology that could do harm? How is that different from if we, went back in time and we were talking about some other technology? If you took us into context in the past, we could have been having the 1853 podcast or whatever, and we were talking about the invention of all the terrible conditions of people coming in out of agriculture and into cities, but then again, things weren't great out in the countryside. The point, what I'm trying to work out is what's unsettling us as humans about AI, because it feels like this is very different, or maybe it's just the first time something like this has happened in our lifetime. Because I can't think of a technology that we've encountered in our lifetime that makes us feel as impactful, because the gun had already been invented, the Industrial Revolution had already happened. I'm just wondering if we're just having our moment, and whether actually we'll look back on this 100 years or so, if the recording is still surviving somewhere in the cloud, and people will go, "Wow, look how worried they were," or not, David, or it's an apocalyptic scene, and that never happens.
Right. So a car has got a big engine, a high performance engine. Let's say that AI, that engine is AI. It could take the Earth to really good places, the Earth as a society. On the other hand, you don't go out there without brakes. And maybe you and I, John, are just, dabbing at the brake a little bit just to make sure that this vehicle, of AI is actually, they're all the bits there, to make it, as it were, fit for purpose. Perhaps it does need a few more people on the brakes. I know there's concern very much at, G7 level, and obviously that big sort of Bletchley Park thing. And of course, the benefits could be manifest. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
If it's not tempered with sufficient sanity.
Yes. And
people not, just a few people, not to jump on the bandwagon, and just to say, let's have a little bit of realism here.
Yes.
And maybe this does need, a sort of thorough education from school through university, everything. It's certainly, if I was to say to the Advertising Standards Authority, I would ask the ASA, my toothbrush has been put down as AI enabled.
Yeah.
I think that is a misnomer, and I think you need to follow up.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're going to end up with black tulip mania.
That's true. And also, David, I'm just mindful to say, building on what you've just said, is that the brakes on a sports car, maybe not so much on an aircraft, but on a sports car, the brakes are there because they enable you to go faster. Yeah, you do not want to be doing 100 miles an hour and not be able to take the corner because you have no brakes. If you don't have any brakes, you're going to be driving at 5 miles an hour all the way. So there is the caution, the necessary caution isn't to be into a Luddite space and go, at a pedestrian. This is about, like you say, checking, and doing those checks so you can go faster. I suppose your analogy was you can then take off, but when you get to the other end, you're gonna be safe when you land because you've got brakes that are working. I'm just wondering if that's a good analogy.
I think so, and and maybe the car is a better analogy than an aircraft, but it was I think I was trying to explain that, you need some process to check that, before you build up, to your 15 miles an hour taxiing speed, things work. Before you can't stop and things become. But I think, a more common comparison would be in a car.
Yeah.
And of course, John, you and I obey the speed limit all the time.
Always.
On the nail. But there will be wrongdoers.
Yeah.
Who will rely on those same, on the vehicle to go fast because, they might have done a crime or they just enjoy driving, driving fast.
They haven't got their MOT. They don't have brakes at work.
I think we've touched there, John, also about, who, there are two players here and, we've got the good players and the bad players.
Yeah. And
maybe, there's a sort of kind of gray area in, the middle, which is about commercial drivers for, kind of individual profit from the manufacturers of AI and how they get competitive advantage by creating an AI ecosystem. This is the, as it were, the developers of the AI, ChatGPT or, I don't know if I can name that many, the gray people in the middle, neither good nor bad, but under normal commercial drivers for profit, growth in earnings per share and so on.
Yeah.
How do you temper that so that when you produce an AI system, actually you're reasonably persuaded that, okay, it might have its faults, but it acts on behalf of all of those who may not be enlightened about the commercial drivers behind it.
Yes. Yeah.
The ownership of it. People in commerce don't develop something unless they can make a lot of money out of it, I guess.
Yeah. And actually, that's partly makes the world go round. But I think there's also the other group, which is maybe the uninformed, the people that are kind of sleepwalking. David, it's been absolutely fascinating this evening. We're going to take away so much from this session. But I can't help but I've counted that you've given me 5 honest men, and you mentioned there were 6. So can you tell us who is the 6th honest man?
The last honest serving man, sorry to ladies present, is How. And, we've been through the what, why, when, where, who, we know that it's still quite mushy. We've seen that there are some, risks involved here, democratic processes, people being unaware that there might be sub-agendas behind an AI system, and so on. There is probably a lack of education and awareness in amongst the users, and this is obviously moving very fast. But it's how do we ensure, as I've said before, that artificial intelligence is used for its best purposes, and how we curtail the use of artificial intelligence for general benefit, particularly in addressing things like global challenges without adding another challenge to be overcome. So we come back to the question about, is this about AI strategy or is it about data culture? And I think we've, moved on from things like taxonomy, we've explained some of that and so on. It's very, very important that we look at the quality of data going into the front end of these, big systems in order to ensure that the correct answers, maybe even the correct advice, because we go back to the Neolithic brain, is being delivered to the user. And of course, culture is something that is innate. We've probably got more culture awareness about the use of ICT systems than we have about the risks and rewards of artificial intelligence. And this is an area that I think needs to be focused upon, but it needs to be focused upon at pace, at speed, at tempo, Otherwise, we'll find that we're going to lose the massive benefits that AI might bring to the globe and to all of the citizens within it. And I think but how we do that, I think we're going to have to leave that a little bit open. And maybe that's a subject that we could, a debate that we could have with those who have been on the podcast today.
Brilliant. David Livingstone, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure and delight to talk to you this evening. And I really appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.